by referring to a statement made in earlier debates by Senator Boyce, who, when he recognized the intention of certain bills and the overall purpose of those bills, he would often remark, "This is good legislation." And I think that there's no one in the chamber today that would disagree, Mr. President, with those sentiments. This is good legislation. Not only are we seeking to repeal and correct even the earlier bill of 1957, but the various provisions that have been addressed by many of the senators, commencing with the acting leader of government business, will confirm that view that this is good legislation. Sir, I want to focus my very short presentation on what I consider to be an intention from the bill, and that is to strengthen our focus on business facilitation. I want to occasion my thoughts and set my thoughts within that theme, within that frame, that we are seeking to address a perennial issue that has been affecting our brand as a jurisdiction, that has been affecting our people who are desirous of doing business, who are desirous of trading in this country, and that is business facilitation. We have had a challenge, sir, with the ease of doing business in Barbados for some time. You just simply refer to those various reports. Mr. President, you will see that Barbados had what I call an unenviable position of peaking at 132 position out of 190 countries back in 2017. We were ranked, sir, at 132 out of 190 countries relative to the ease of doing business. And sir, when we look at what I call the supporting or the other bit of data, the other report that we tend to refer to, the Global Competitiveness Index, again, you'll see that we're not trending in a desired post, a desired position. And as we drill down to understand what were the issues affecting our ranking, what were some of the main issues affecting our ranking, sir, the information would suggest that bureaucracy was a major concern. Now, sir, I sat in my seat before lunch and I heard one of our senators in his contribution make statements and give the impression that bureaucracy is good. And the way that it was being done before, relative to how persons applied for and accessed a liquor license in this country, was a good thing. Sir, I want to distance myself from such comments and to suggest that in this highly competitive global environment within which we operate as a jurisdiction and within which we encourage our private sector to operate within which we encourage foreign direct investment to help with our overall development, that bureaucracy cannot be a good thing. It cannot be a good thing. So I distance myself from those comments and suggest to us this bill is intended, Mr. President, to help improve business and doing business in this country. This bill removes a lot of the bureaucratic headaches that persons went through, persons, Mr. President, from all walks of life, persons from all types of businesses, from the very big, the very large, to the very small. We see that coming out in this bill. And so I want to focus on what the research suggests are the benefits of business licensing tools and government services. The fact, sir, that there's a body of research out there, International Trade Center and several others who would have done research on the benefits of licensing tools. How can these tools help with the discharge and the delivery of government services? Because I think, as I read the bill, as I looked at the bill, as I understood the intention, Mr. President, behind the amendments today, that this is the desire of government to improve overall the delivery of government services through the introduction of critical business licensing tools. And as I said, there's a body of research out there that supports this. And so there are 4 key points, Mr. President, that the research would suggest to us represent those benefits to a country, represent those benefits to government and the society overall. And the first one that the research suggests to us, Mr. President, is the ability to improve the customer experience overall. It's the first one. The ability to improve the customer experience overall. It is said that a modern business licensing system should make all services accessible, putting everything online, from the initial application to fee calculations, and even to the notification, Mr. President, of the process for the applicant. And as we heard from the leader of government business this morning, that is in essence what has been done. That the technical team that worked on this particular process was able to remove this now from the applicant going to the magistrate's court, the applicant having, Mr. President, to consider, depending on the location of the particular event that they want to have, which court that they go to, having now, Mr. President, not wasting time, as it were, to go and stand in long lines and having to wait inordinately lengthy periods of time, that they can now complete this process online. And so we will be able to see from this a significant improvement now in our customer service experience, that government is now able to facilitate, Mr. President, those who desire to apply for that license, that they can do so using the technology. We are in the digital space. If it's one thing that I believe we've learned from COVID-19, and maybe a significant benefit from the COVID-19 experience, is the use of technology and the need for us to improve the delivery of goods and services, interactions with consumers, and so on, using technology. And that is a good thing. So improving the customer experience, and I want to use the example of the certificate of character that the Irish person would now, apply for online. The fact that the process has already started with that. Gone are the days where you applied for a job and you had to get that certificate of character to take in for your interview. And, Mr. President, you had to wait weeks on end, sometimes even months, in order to get that document in your hand. And we've seen, and we know of the experiences where persons have lost the opportunity, Mr. President, lost the opportunity for that job, lost the opportunity for that interview because of not having that certificate of character. And it is this administration, Mr. President, who understood that, again, as a business licensing tool, again, as a tool to facilitate the way business is done, that improved that process, transformed and revolutionized that process. To this day, they tell me that you can actually get back your license now in a matter of hours, so that you don't have to be disadvantaged with that job application. You don't have to be disadvantaged with whatever it is that you're intending on doing, because the process now has been improved. And so the same is intended with this bit of legislation, with the amendments to this legislation, that we can now have the process online, and therefore we will now improve the customer experience. The customer, as I said, can apply, they can even pay online, they can track their process, Mr. President, track the process of the application, and overall have an improved customer experience. And that is what our government ought to be about at the end of the day, making it easier for citizens to do business with government, making it easier for investors even who want to do business here to be able to do so, Mr. President. So this is the first point that the research suggested to us. And the second one is that having these business licensing tools, we're able to increase local revenues. We're able to increase the opportunity to earn, increase the opportunity for, in this case, government to earn, to improve its intake. Now, whereas I heard again the comment today about it's not all about money, I agree. I agree, Mr. President. It can never be all about money. But I dare say that we understand, as the writer of Proverbs once said, money answers all things. And so we know, Mr. President, that in order to improve the quality of life of your citizens, in order to improve processes, in order to deliver the services that our citizens need, we need revenue to do so. And so what I see with this, again based on the research, because I'm couching this presentation entirely on the fact that research has been done to show that this type of improvement in your processes within a country will benefit government, citizens, and the public at large. So licensing fees, as we know, contribute to the coffers, yes, of the state, and helps us as a government to deliver those services that our people are in need of. At the end of the day, you cannot get improvement in healthcare, Mr. President. We cannot continue to finance our tertiary education, and even primary and secondary education, from nursery, schooling as well. You cannot get all of these things, Mr. President, without revenue. So we must be prepared to earn revenue. No, I agree and take the point that, especially at this time, and it has been said before by others in the other place, that there is no intention at this time to raise any taxes. I don't think that any government in their right mind would even consider that in a pandemic environment. And this government won't. But we have to improve our systems as much as possible so that the potential for revenue growth and earning is there. Mr. President, when the Ministry of Small Business started this process of reviewing the liquor license, of making proposals to amend the legislation, Mr. President, the minister at the time in the other place reported that there were over 1,000 applications still waiting to be processed. Now, you can understand and appreciate the kind of revenue that has been lost as a result of not being able to process those applications. Not being able, Mr. President, to get off that backlog. There is a cost to bureaucracy. There's a cost to not being efficient and effective. There's a cost. And so what we are hoping that will be done here with this improvement, with these amendments to this bill, is that by having this process now online, we are able to remove the bottlenecks. We're able to remove the long periods of time for the applicant. And as a result of it being a lot more nimble, a lot more customer friendly, a lot more responsive to the needs of business persons, the public, etc., that we will be able to improve the revenue earning potential of government, which is significant for us at this point in time. I'm sure that there's no one in the chamber that would disagree, Mr. President. We have to find ways, efficiently so, of improving our revenues. Not increasing taxes, but improving our revenues by having efficient processes and efficient systems of how we deliver goods and services to the public. So that was the second point the research showed, that there is the opportunity to increase local revenues. Tangential to that is maybe this third point. And the third point is that these business licensing tools will help to reduce costs and increase business development. Now, this is the point, Mr. President, with your indulgence, I want to spend maybe a little longer, a 30-second more on. Because we're able now to reduce costs, so we don't have the bureaucratic processes, which we know that time is money. It is a saying that all of us have heard. Say there's some who have done research to support this hypothesis, if we can call it that. But time is money. Because if it is that a business person, a small business person, Mr. President, has to go to 3 or 4 departments in one day to try to access a license to trade, that is a day loss for that business, for that entrepreneur, who could otherwise have been focusing on revenue generation. So there is a cost to wasting time. It is not just a cost, in my view, and based again on the data, for government itself, but it is a cost to those consumers, the public now, who is desirous of accessing that service being delivered by government. And we know that time is money. And we want to be able to increase business development. Now that, to me, Mr. President, was not the intention of the architects back in 1957. I don't get that impression that it was the intention back then to have a piece of legislation that facilitates business and encourages business development, especially of the average person in the community. I don't get that impression. Matter of fact, I would be bold enough to say that it would appear to me that it was a disincentive. It was a disincentive for persons, ordinary people, in the community, in the villages across our country who wanted to trade, who wanted to get involved in business. It was a disincentive for them to do so because of the hoops that they had to literally jump through. Now, Mr. President, we talked about the shops, the cook shops, the village shops, and so on. I recall reading a report some time ago that suggested that pre-COVID, there could easily have been about 1,500 of those rum shop type, village shop type enterprises and activities and so on in Barbados. No, the truth is, when you look at that number, Mr. President, these are ordinary Barbadians. These village shops and rum shops, I heard one senator say you don't like the term rum shop, but at the end of the day, you're not advocating necessarily drinking intoxicating liquor, but the rum shop concept is a part of the culture of Barbados. The same reason or the reality that we can identify a church nearly on every street, you can identify a rum shop. It is a part of the culture of this country. Let us not get away from it. It is a part of who we are as a people. It helped, in my view, to provide a forum for our people to congregate. It helped them to relieve some stress. It helped them to, share with what is happening in the village on a weekly basis. It helped with the social fabric of our society. But the data says that about 1,500 or so of these operated just prior to COVID-19. Can you imagine, Mr. President, about 1,500 type businesses of this type having to apply annually for a license, having to go to the particular magistrate's court, and then having to maybe get a health certificate and having to get some other food license and all of these other things. Can you imagine, Mr. President, the cost to these 1,500 or so firms or businesses or entities on an annual basis? There is a cost. And so what we are intended on with this legislation is to encourage, I don't think that the numbers are that high today, but to encourage, Mr. President, that any individual within the community, from Christchurch to St. Lucie, St. Philip and St. James and all the parishes in between, who has that skill that they're able to manage a shop, that they're able, Mr. President, to provide a need based on the demand, what their consumers, their customers in the village, in the community suggest that they need relative to food and drink and so on. Any of those who at this time are desirous of so doing, that they can, because we have a facility that is easily accessible. It is not intimidating to them. It will therefore enfranchise the average man or woman that otherwise might have felt that they could not have been enfranchised in this country. This is what this bill is doing. This bill is providing the opportunity for the average person to start that business idea that they had. Now, I heard again today from one of the opposition senators the fact, and reminding us, yes, we are in a COVID environment, and it is because of being in a COVID environment, when we know that business will be challenged, that it is the responsibility, therefore, of government to facilitate the opportunity for business to happen. This is one of those tools, Mr. President, that will help us to so do. I believe that strongly. So we're reducing costs we are increasing business development and increasing business activity. The data says that with modern tools like this one, we're able to remove the unnecessary hours spent in processing applications, where we can obviously take staff, for example, who would have been otherwise engaged in those menial tasks and rechannel their efforts into higher level activity. Because you have a more technologically driven way now of getting it done. And this is what we want to see, Mr. President. We want to see that at this very challenging moment in our development as a small island developing state, not only Barbados but across the world, that we're able to consider what we term as the average man or woman, and providing the opportunity that they can get a leg up. I don't believe, Mr. President, I'll say here now in handouts, really, I don't. But I believe in giving people a hand up, if you will, a leg up. And so those that have the shops and those that seek to maximize and to capitalize on the various festivals and events and so on, you think benefit? Who are the people that benefit, Mr. President, from our various festivals, the Crop Over Festival and all the other activities? Who benefit from these? I'm sure when the economists collect the data and analyze, you'll see that there's a multiplier effect across the country where a lot of small enterprising people are the ones who are able to organize activities, organize events and so on, and benefit from this process. So we are encouraging business development. We are encouraging enterprise development and enterprise activity as a result of making it easier and simpler for persons to access the licenses needed to trade. And finally, in this third point, we also have to consider those that would apply for the license to be able to export. Mr. President, those that would be exporting our rum, that they too no longer have the headache, the burden of waiting an inordinately long time to be able to get that license to trade. And therefore we can encourage more to maybe get into the export market and seek to internationalize their operations. As it is now, we're seeing quite a few small firms manufacturing wines. So I pay attention to what I consider to be the sunrise type of industries. Those industries now popping up. Pay attention to them. And we're seeing quite a bit of that happening, right? And a lot of them using local products, local fruits and other inputs. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I would love to see that they're able to scale up to the point where they can also access the export market. And in order to do so, in order to trade, they too may require accessing this license in order to so do. And so you will see that in the bill, the provisions have been made for different types of licenses to be applied for different types of business operations. So I think, Mr. President, that third point, based on the data of reducing costs and encouraging business development, encouraging enterprise development, is well borne out from our experiences, what we're seeing on the ground, and what we want to encourage as well to happen within our country. And so the fourth point from the research is that these modern business licensing tools help to boost interdepartmental collaboration. So they help to ensure that data is properly shared and accessed across departments, especially within government, so that, you know, at the end of the day, the whole of government approach that we've been talking about, we've been hearing about, can be realized. And you don't have a situation where one department doesn't know, doesn't have the data, and next is maybe accused of not wanting to share that data and so on. No, having these types of tools, especially the fact that they're now online, helps with that interdepartmental collaboration. And therefore, the Department of Commerce that will have responsibility for administering this legislation, and I believe administering the online platform, will be able now to share that information with ease. Let's say to the Ministry of Finance. Let's say to the Statistical Department. Let's say to the Central Bank, who may, for whatever reason, need to collect information on what is happening vis-a-vis the access to liquor licenses and the application for liquor licenses. So we can see that with this type of platform, you'll get that sharing of information. All of us in here, Mr. President, can attest to the fact of having to maybe deal with more than one department on a particular issue, and when you would have thought that the information was shared, it was not. And you have then to leave one department, give all your information, fill out all the forms there, and then go to another, and you say, but I did that already at Department X. And say, no, you got to do it again here. You have to stand up and you got to fill out that form again, or forms again, and provide the same kind of information again to another department. Again, that is time. Again, that is cost. It is frustrating. It is a cost not only physically, but it can be a cost mentally, because, it is really frustrating. But the important point here is these tools help with that interdepartmental collaboration. And I am pleased, therefore, Mr. President, that the fact that we're able to adopt these platforms and these processes as a government, that over a period of time, we should begin to see now a more efficiently functioning civil service, a more efficiently functioning government system. And that has, Mr. President, the potential to make sure that as a country, we will, over a period, now begin to improve our rankings in these international reports, assessments, and so on. So that as we have begun to move in this administration, when it came into office, recognizing, as I began, as I'll conclude, that the ease of doing business was so high, started a process. And so we've been able to move a few notches down, and we are 128 at last count. And we are working, Mr. President, to continue to improve those numbers so that we become a more competitive jurisdiction. That is what it's about. Our citizens are enfranchised. Our brand as a jurisdiction, as a state, Mr. President, is improved. We are a lot more competitive. That when it comes to FDI, when it comes to those who want to do business with us, and they look at that data, that they will be encouraged to so do, and that the experience then is borne out when they do come to do business with us. So I think, Mr. President, that this is a positive move. This is a step in the right direction towards ensuring that we become a more efficiently and competitively run state. I therefore applaud the efforts at bringing this particular amendment to us at this time. And Mr. President, I give it my wholehearted support. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator Dr. Holder. Senator Nurse.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to make my contribution to this debate to this bill relating to the liquor license bill. I have to say, Mr. President, that having reviewed the bill, it obviously, in some cases does represent an improvement on the existing act. And some of the previous speakers would have looked at a number of the improvements. I think particularly so of what has been spoken about a lot, the improvement in the whole administration regarding the issuance of liquor licenses by taking it out of the whole domain of the magistrate court's jurisdiction. And I can remember many years ago, you would see from time to time appearing in the press complaints by bar owners, restaurateurs, and various other people involved in the sale of alcoholic beverages who were complaining about the amount of time it took to have their license issued. And of course, the amount of time they themselves had to waste in going to the magistrate's court and so on. And so you could waste a whole day at the court waiting to be called. Now, successive administrations, I believe, did some little improvements. But it seems to me that this represents the first time that a fairly significant redoing of the act has been done. And of course, Senator McConney did mention the fact that on the establishment of the authority, what they will be moving towards is a complete system of digitization. And that, of course, makes sense. We don't want that as part of government's digitization process currently going on, that you introduce a new act, but yet you do go through the whole old system of doing things. And I hope, of course, that that goes smoothly, and that in itself will help to alleviate a lot of the problems which would have occurred in the past. And I say I hope it goes smoothly because I'm thinking of the licensing authority, which currently also has some aspects of digitization. Yet it has been the subject of, the talk show programs over the last few weeks, nearly every day, complaints about being able to get your driver's license or get your learner's permit or your weight certificate. And, that seems to be a whole level of madness which is occurring. And I really hope that the Prime Minister or perhaps will take charge of that situation. I know it is always hinted that the Prime Minister seems to take on all the challenges in all the ministries. But the truth is that when you hear those complaints at the Ministry of Transport and Works, you realize that something needs to be done, and done quickly, to sort out the issues that are occurring there. And so I hope that those problems will not be repeated in other aspects of government offices, which are also being digitized, and I trust that this aspect of it will go off smoothly. And of course, Mr. President, mention has been made by, I believe, all of the speakers of the aspect of raising the age at which alcoholic beverages can be served to young adults, moving that age, and moving to age 18. And Senator Greenidge, I spent a lot of time explaining the importance of that age 18. And it was very useful because I always had this difficulty in understanding, Mr. President, why some things you heard that the age of consent was one age and that you could vote at a different age and you could, so I got a lot out of that process that Senator Greenidge did go through in his presentation. So there's some positive aspects, I think, and improvements to the bill. As an individual who would have come out of the private sector, Mr. President, I well understand that this would be welcome by the business community. It is frustrating. It's frustrating when you have to deal with government departments, and I don't want to belabor or to beat up on any particular government department, because I understand and I know that it is not always as simple as it seems to be. But I make that point because this bill is, I think it is looking to be able to issue licenses within a very short period of time. I believe it's like 7 days, if memory serves me. And while we would like to see business being speeded up to that level of efficiency, I'm just wondering if, and I'm hoping that we're not throwing out, that government would not be throwing out some of the aspects which occurred under the old Act, and which probably was some of the part of the reason why it took so long to issue the licenses. And I'm thinking of perhaps things like due diligence and so on that the police department used to do. I remember, and I think I'm right here, where when you applied for a license, you had to go to the police, you had to go to district A, I think it was, the police, and you got the application forms and so on, and then you started out that process, and the police would visit the premises, and they would do their investigations and so on. I believe you also had to submit certificates of character and so on. So to make sure that you were not ending up issuing license to people of ill repute, and that at least we were trying to ensure that those people with such a heavy responsibility of selling alcoholic beverages were people who were responsible and people who would ensure that they don't, for example, sell beverages to intoxicated people or to minors or for whatever. So I'm hoping that in order to get through this process of being able to issue licenses in such a short period of time, that we're not giving up any of the things that were useful and necessary in the system before. But if we think about it, Mr. President, there are some ugly aspects involved in the whole consumption of alcoholic beverages. Now, this bill is not for this purpose, obviously, but I want to raise these issues because when we look at the whole process involved in this manufacture and use and sale of alcoholic beverages, we have to remember what consequences can occur, what bad consequences can occur. Government, of course, gets a significant amount of revenue in terms of excise taxes from the manufacture and sale of alcohol. Collect VAT taxes that will be collected, when the product is sold at retail level or in bars or whatever. So government, while recognizing that they do benefit from an expanding industry which uses alcoholic beverages, I think it is important for government, as well as the manufacturers of these alcoholic products, the wholesalers, the retailers, all the other people who are involved, has to recognize that a tremendous responsibility also rests on their shoulders to ensure that we minimize the bad effects and the harm which can occur from abuse of alcoholic beverages. Otherwise, consumption can come at a significant abuse, and consumption can come at a significant cost to government and to the entire community. And I believe we could look at the costs related to premature death, the costs related to disabilities, the costs related to health, various health issues that can arise from the overuse, from the abuse of alcoholic beverages. And one of the issues that I wanted to speak on and to touch on is the cost which could be associated with the impact of alcohol on violence, including domestic violence, Mr. President. And I was fairly recently, there was an article by Dr. Trevor Shepard appearing in the Nation newspaper of April the 29th, 2021. And it was titled "The Ugly Side of the Rum Tale." And I would suggest that every one of us in here, when we have a moment, it would be good to go back and read that letter. It was written as a letter to the editor, but to read that letter. And it started out by recognizing that in the same newspaper a few days earlier, a particular distiller was advertising the fact that they had rebranded and reintroduced a new a new rum. And the master blender is reported as having indicated that she was so happy and so joyful at this new rum because she could remember the days when her family drank this rum and enjoyed it. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. But Dr. Shepherd then went on to indicate what he said was what he called the ugly side of alcoholic beverage consumption. And he recalled the days, and most of us, I believe even now, can remember those days in the villages and so on, where the workers who worked in, as stevedores and who worked in road building and road cleaning and who worked in agriculture, when they got their pay packets on Friday evenings, they headed straight to the rum shop. And Dr. Shepherd, of course, pointed out that it affected his family directly because he remembered one time when his aunt's husband came home drunk and for no reason he broke his aunt's 2 hands. And that is the kind of issues that can surface and that can come out of this misuse and abuse of alcohol. And of course, he said that what his aunt often did was to send him early before he got too inebriated and to bring the husband home. Of course, many others didn't necessarily make it home, and they ended up spending the weekends sleeping on the shop step or in the gutter. Those that got home became, as I said before, abusive to the families and to the wives and to the children and so on. So those are the bad aspects which are associated with this whole issue of consumption. And Mr. President, I think it's important, therefore, for government to have a strategy plan to assist, to have a 5-year or whatever period government considers appropriate of a strategic approach for making sure that we can reduce the demand for the beverage so that it is not abused and that people don't harm themselves. I think it is important that a strategic plan, a plan or strategy, we also look at things like marketing of the product. I remember years ago, for example, when you would see those lovely cigarette ads And again, as Dr. Shepard, I think, did mention in this article, he said, you know, you saw the young girls sitting around with the handsome young men, and the men smoking these cigarettes, and, you know, the young girls inhaling all this wonderful smoke. Of course, we know since then what happens. And a lot of work was done in order to reduce the demand for cigarettes. I hardly see people, you know, around these days smoking. Now, obviously, there's legislation which prevents smoking in public places and so on. And that has been a success story of tobacco. Now, I'm not suggesting that it will happen with alcohol. I don't think that you will see any significant reduction. But what we would like to see, and what I think we wish, is that there is a more responsible use and of these various products, Mr. President. And also, in that strategy, I would really like to see some research, some serious research done. For example, the correlation between alcoholic abuse and domestic violence, and domestic abuse, for example. What are the relationships? What is the relationship between young people who are exposed to those types of situations, how it is impacting on them in their young lives and as they become young adults. So I think that an overall strategy program to look at these issues, to put measures in place to control them, particularly things like, as I said, like the marketing of the products, making sure that marketing of alcoholic beverages and so on is limited and it's not targeted, you know, very heavily towards the young adults, for example. You know, and I remember, for example, some years ago, one of the local radio stations on Saturdays, there used to be this program which was sponsored by Guinness, the Rush Hour, the Guinness Rush Hour. And that was targeted, Mr. President, at young adults, the young people. And this is the sort of, these are the things that I'm thinking about, that a strategy has to be put in place to ensure that the sellers, the manufacturers, the distributors and so on are not being allowed to put advertising and marketing programs in place which would significantly cause young people to get involved in the overconsumption of alcohol and the abuse of the product. And of course, I could go on to other aspects. We know what impact it can have on people as well in terms of diseases. And we got to be recognized that alcoholism is a disease. And therefore, we need to be able to see how we can deal and to strategize on reducing those concerns we have related to the consumption of the product. And so, Mr. President, I will support I will support the bill. As I said, I think it is an improvement on what was there before. But, as I said, I would like to see that we deal with what Dr. Shepard in his article referred to as the ugly aspects of the consumption of alcoholic beverages. And with those few words, Mr. President, I'm obliged.
Thank you very much, Senator Nurse. Senator Dr. Haynes.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Chamber on the occasion of us meeting to repeal and replace the 1957 Liquor License Act. This is the first time in Barbados' post-colonial history that we're seeking to address legal drinking age. Consequential upon the passage of this bill will be amendments to the Minor Offences Act, which will see the creation of 3 new offenses being created with respect to the sale of intoxicating beverages to persons under the age of 18, the supply of intoxicating beverages to persons under the age of 18, and the employment of persons under the age of 18 in the business of the sale and supply of intoxicating beverages. So why have we decided to make reducing teen access to alcohol a national priority? Simply from a public health perspective, the aim is to mitigate deaths and to mitigate harms. How many of us can remember what it was like to be a teen? For me, it was not so long ago. Many of us, many of us might recall those days. And the thing is, a lot of the impulsive behaviors and the lashing out and stuff that our parents had to live through were generally actually on account of the fact that our brains were not fully matured as yet. Senator Greenidge, during the course of his presentation, made reference to the fact that there's no magic in the age of 16. The truth is there's no magic to the age of 18 either, because as far as we see it in medicine, the transition from childhood to adulthood is less of a dichotomy and more of a continuum. The human brain is not fully developed till about 25 years old. And I'm not making a case today for us to raise the drinking age to 25. Not trying to get cursed. But one of the funny things is it seems like car rental companies actually, because you can't actually sign to hire a car until you're 25 years old. So it seems like car rental companies figure this one out even before the neuroscientists did. The reason for this is that no matter how well a teen performs, whether it's at CXC or CAPE level, ultimately, they're still short on things like judgment and being rational and being able to make those kinds of choices. And one of the main reasons is that an area of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is generally the part of the brain that adults use to process information, is responsible for the greater levels of judgment and awareness, whereas teens rely on a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is more responsible for being emotional, being impulsive, and being more high risk and sensation seeking. So imagine naturally having this neurodevelopmental predisposition to having impaired judgment, and then adding an intoxicating fuel to the fire. That's one of the reasons that we're here today, because we understand that generally young adults, adolescents, and children are not neurodevelopmentally in a place where they're capable already. They're already compromised in terms of decision-making capacity. They tend to be more emotional, more erratic. And then you're adding something that will further impair their ability. So that's one of the main reasons that we're seeking to deal with this particular part of the legislation. One of the things that I want to focus in on specifically is related to motor vehicular accidents. And the reason for this is that traffic-related injuries is the second leading cause of death worldwide for persons between the ages of 5 and 29 years old. The sad thing is that in large part, traffic-related accidents are largely preventable and predictable. Drinking alcohol before driving increases crash risks among teens compared with older drivers, even when they have the same blood alcohol level. One of the things that the United States saw in the 1970s and 1980s prior to the enactment of their National Drinking Age Act was something called blood borders. Because imagine, you have a large continent with separate states, and at that time, each state was determining what their drinking age would be. And what was happening is that teenagers and young adults were leaving states that had higher drinking ages to go into neighboring states with lower drinking ages on weekends. And what was happening when they tried to make the commute back on the Friday night or the Saturday night, some catastrophic and horrific car accidents were happening, and they were seeing an increased loss of life. One of the parents of one of the victims founded a lobbying group called Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and they actually ended up influencing the Reagan administration to implement the National Minimum Drinking Act of 1984. 4 years subsequent to the passage of that act, the United States General Accounting Office conducted a study which revealed that youth drinking was reduced by 24%. Youth driving after drinking, was also reduced, and alcohol-related traffic accidents among youth were also reduced. So I decided to look for something in contrast to that, and what I found was that in 1999, New Zealand actually made the decision to reduce their drinking age from the age of 20 to the age of 18. What did they see? A significant increase in drinking among 16 to 19-year-olds, and also a rise in traffic-related accidents among that same demographic. Furthermore, there's an impact on cognitive, perceptive, and motor skills that leads to death and injury from other types of accidents, including burns, drownings, falls, self-inflicted injuries, and we cannot forget the increased vulnerability to coercive sexual activity and sexual assaults. What we must also not forget is that outside of the immediate intoxicating effects of alcohol, there are longer-term impacts on the anatomy and physiology of the human brain. One of the parts of the brain is called the hippocampus, and it's responsible for learning and memory. The hippocampus is especially susceptible to alcohol exposure, and one of the lasting impacts that we found is that the hippocampus is actually smaller in people who have initiated alcohol use earlier on and have also drank more heavily. So they also have a longer-term impact in terms of their ability to learn new information and also their ability to store new memories. So where would we expect to see the dysfunction or the disruption? Behavioral problems, school performance, hobbies, and even their ability to learn new skills like driving. It may also impact your ability to learn new things for the rest of your life. I won't get into all of the medical things, but it can also impact your heart, causing arrhythmias, causing cardiomyopathies, pancreatitis, alcoholic liver cirrhosis, and all of these other things. Senator Greenidge, during his presentation, also made reference to the era of prohibition in the 1920s, where the 18th Amendment saw the banning of the sale of alcohol, and he correctly made reference to the fact that consequent to that was actually an increase in black market sale and access to alcohol, where just a few years later, they had to go back to the drawing board and reverse everything. But I decided to look for some more recent data on what has been going on. And we know that the United States has one of the highest legal drinking ages in the world at the age of 21. There are other countries with 25. There's some where alcohol consumption is banned altogether. But for the intents and purposes of this presentation, we're going to use the US as our upper limit. Other countries, let's say throughout Europe, actually have lower drinking ages. So what I decided to do was to take a look at how alcohol consumption among adolescents and young adults compared between the two groups in terms of whether countries with lower drinking ages had more alcohol consumption or lower alcohol consumption compared to the US. And data from the WHO actually showed that there were greater levels of binge drinking among European teens, where the drinking age is lower, compared to 15 and 19-year-olds from the United States. The WHO also says per capita total alcohol consumption in Europe averages between 10 to 12.4 liters of pure alcohol, compared to 7.5 to 9.9 in the United States. Most tellingly, one of the most feared complications of chronic alcohol use is cirrhosis of the liver. Liver cirrhosis rates per 100,000 in the United States are actually around 14.9%. When we compare that to Germany, it has 18.8, Denmark 20.2 per 100,000. So the proof is in the pudding, and at the end of the day, it actually suggests that contrary to what we see a lot in the media with regards to the frat parties and so on, the US actually, based on the data, appears to have a healthier drinking culture based on what the data reflects. So what we're seeing basically is that stricter alcohol policies can actually help to reduce injury and death. Now, with regards to the local context, the National Council on Substance Abuse was established in 1995 with an aim of preventing, eliminating, and controlling access to banned substances. One of their main aims, and one of the things that they tend to do, is to roll out programs, especially community and school-based programs that target young people to help them from getting to the point where they're going there. I was very grateful to Ms. Betty Hunt, the manager of the NCSA, who was able to provide me with some very useful papers to take a look at. One of them was the 2013 secondary school survey. What that survey showed was that the age of first alcohol consumption in Barbados is around age 12, and that is in comparison to 11 years old in Europe and 13 years old in the USA. What was also very interesting was that 3/4 of the 13 to 17-year-olds surveyed suggested that they had used alcohol at some point. And 3 out of 10 of the 13 to 17-year-olds surveyed indicated that they currently continuously use alcohol, and 12% of those ones indicated that they actually binge drink. So it made me ask myself, to what extent are parents understanding the prevalence and the intensity of use of alcohol in their own children? One of the other questions that we need to ask is why our children are turning to using alcohol and other controlled substances. So when we look at the risk factors, one of the big ones is actually the parents' drinking behavior. So one of the patterns is that if in a household parents drink, children typically might, with or without the parents' permission, try to make access of the alcohol. Also, mental health issues, depression and anxiety. One of the things is, it's a bit complicated here because it hasn't been fully elucidated as yet whether the mental health issue contributes to or results in the use of the alcohol. Peer pressure, peer drinking. I had my first drink on my 16th birthday. I guess my friends thought it would have been a rite of passage moment. I decided beer was not for me, and I didn't drink for another about 5 years. Childhood trauma, including physical and sexual abuse and bullying. As Senator Nurse had made reference to, advertising as well is a big factor. So very valid point made there with regards to the youth population being targeted with programs like the one that you referenced to. And what I also thought of, the name of the program, Rush Hour, actually also has a road reference, which is also dangerous. So well-made point there. So here we are at the policy and legislative level, trying to do our best to address a public health matter, which is teenage and youth access to alcohol. But the community and school-based and educational programs also have to go alongside it. A couple of the things that the NCSA currently has going on is that they have a program running called Sports Not Drugs, where they're trying to encourage young people that might be considered at risk typically, to turn towards getting involved in sporting activity. In addition, they run a weekly intervention at the Edna Nichols Center. There's school-based interventions as well at the primary level for Class 3 and Class 4 students. And they have an ongoing program called Project Soft, which seeks to help young people to establish coping skills, manage stress, and stay drug-free. Some of the other recommendations that were made have been to have signage set up at licensed alcohol vendors and to have awareness training as well, put in place for people who are interested in selling alcohol, because there have to be an awareness of the consuming public as to the risk that they're putting themselves at. So I thought that those were very valid. So I'm very pleased that, once again, we're seeing, although COVID-19 is a national priority in terms of public health, it's not the only public health priority, and that we are putting the health of our adolescents and young people on the front burner. And I am in full support of the repeal and replacement of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Dr. Haynes. Senator Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too will be brief. Mr. President, there's a hint in this bill that we may see in the future some regulation with regard to how much alcohol one can consume. Because within the bill, I think there's a section that speaks to timing for special licensing. So we all know that when we announce that for an event, liquor sales or distribution will stop at a certain time, people are allowed to binge buy. I lived in the UK and I saw it every Friday night in the pubs. So we might not solve the problems that we think we're going to solve if we approach it the wrong way. But I'm a bit concerned by some of the debate I've heard today, because we seem to be suggesting that we have established an age for drinking. I think we've established an age for a person under age 18 from participating in the sale or the purchasing. And we have established that, according to one section, that it's an offense to supply it, but there is no punishment for the persons who consume. So I don't know if the person who is drinking it under age 18 is in any way affected by this bill, or when it becomes an act. There are some jurisdictions, Mr. President, in which one is limited to how much alcohol one can purchase in a retail store. There's no provision within this act for such a restriction. So this act clearly doesn't intend to restrict people's access to alcohol in any way. I could go into, prior to this bill, or after this becomes an act, I could go into a store and back up a truck and buy all the alcohol that's available. And there's no restriction as an individual. So you must not leave here feeling that for some reason this bill will address the social issues of alcohol. It will not. It makes for orderly licensing. And that is probably all that it will do. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Mr. Miller. Senator Reverend Dr. Rogers.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It was not my intention to speak on this bill, because as far as I was concerned, it is a straightforward bill seeking to modernize the issuance of liquor licenses in Barbados, which I think is a very positive thing. However, throughout the day, various social issues have been brought into the debate, and coming from an institution, an organization that a part of our sacrament involves the administration of alcohol, an alcoholic product. Of course, at the point in time when we receive it, due to transubstantiation, the accidents have remained the same, but the substance has changed. But I think it was incumbent upon me to say a few words at this point in time, especially given how I would have spoken on the sacramental bill regarding cannabis and other religions. I think it was important that I say a few words here. Strange enough, today, sir, is the feast of St. Dunstan, Archbishop of Canterbury in the 10th century, who was also known to be a master brewer of ale. And lore has it, it's just lore, that on the day of Feast of St. Dunstan, a winter blast comes through and damages all the apple blossoms of the farmers. And it's believed that St. Dunstan caused that so that theirs would get damaged and his wouldn't, so that his brew will be best. But that's a different matter. What I wish to speak on more intently, sir, is the portion of the legislation that deals with minors and the responsibilities of licensees, because I think that's where some of the critical issues would lie. Let us not fool ourselves. For those of us who have grown up in village cultures, Barbados and the West Indies has a culture of rum. It's there in our popular culture. I can still hear the Mighty Sparrows singing, "Rum is macho. If it's on rum, it went, your money is well spent." Or drunk and disorderly. Or at Christmas, we hear on our radio station still, "A gallon of rum, a gallon of rum." I don't care if another Christmas come, I don't even care if Santa Claus come. These are aspects of our culture. And I believe that most little children, well, most adults who would have existed in a particular period would have been sent to the shop at some point in time as a child to collect something for their grandfather. And I'm sure if you spoke to some of them, they would tell you their grandfather didn't know what he was drinking, because he drank so much water, because on the way back, some of the white stuff in the bottle was transferred into their bodies, and then water went in to top it up. And no, sir. I've heard many confessions. So I've just pointed this out, sir, to say that that was a part of our culture, but in the 21st century, we need to look seriously at what our minors are being exposed to and recognize that some of the substances are more dangerous than maybe some of us would have seen at some point in time. In fact, I do not know if there is any limit to the proof of alcohol that can be sold in our country. And so I see that there's a clause here about injurious persons receiving injurious substances. That's in section 31, things that can be injurious to the health. But I know for sure that there are alcoholic products sold here that are over 85% alcohol. And some of those can get into the hands of our children as well. That's hand sanitizer. But as it comes to the dangers that can be posed by alcohol, I don't think we need to rehash. I think Senator Haynes gave a brilliant presentation just now, and she should be commended for that. But one of the things we have to pay close attention to, and I believe that Senator Nurse brought it up when he spoke about advertising, not only advertising, the entertainment industry must be responsible in how we speak or we project alcohol in the country. Because I can remember distinctly that for a few years, consecutively, every road march song was about alcohol. when it was, I'm not leaving till the rum done. Oh, oh, I want my rum. And time again, and these are the things that influence people and how especially what our young people respond to. Popular culture is very, very influential. And if we want to talk about the dangers of excessive use of alcohol in our country, we need to ask our entertainers to be a part of the discussion as well. Because they're the ones who have this power of influence on the minds of our young people and can get them to embrace things that perhaps they could do well to leave alone. Now, I am in no way a prude. I believe that alcohol has its place in our culture. It is a part of who we are. It's a part of our product. Just about every nation in the world produces some ale that relates to their culture. I think we know in Barbados the story about the Barbadian, Jamaican, and the Vincentian who went to a bar and they were arguing about which beer is the best and they're going to prove it. So the Jamaican ordered his Red Stripe and the Vincentian ordered Hyroon and the Bajan ordered Mauby. And they asked him, what are you doing? He said, well, you all order soft drinks, so I just decided. So every culture has its own thing. So let us not fool ourselves. Our products have their place, but everything must be done responsibly, and we must encourage our people to utilize their products responsibly. And just as I would have argued for a threshold in terms of the potency of the cannabis that we would wish to have on the island, I also wish for us to regulate not only the quantity that can be accessed by persons. I'm happy to see here that licensees should not sell liquor to drunk people. But I think there should be an even clearer delineation that before they even get drunk, that there's a limit, as Senator Maynard would have pointed out. At some point in time, there's a limit to what we can consume at any given point in time, so that there is some sort of order within the society where the use of alcohol is concerned. So that is just my little bit on it, sir. I think we all are responsible in how alcohol is used within our society and how we consume it within our society. And I would encourage us to all play our part. I started out speaking about the organization of which I'm a part, and I know that some may be critical and say that why not use non-alcoholic wine. I do not know that such a thing exists, sir. And I would quote a gentleman who came some years ago to present to a seminar on us, and he said, you know, the New Testament takes two positions on drinking. John the Baptist took one and Jesus took the other. You take your choice. I will end here. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Senator Dr. Rogers, for a spirited presentation. Couldn't help myself, sorry. Senator Grant.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do not intend to detain the chamber in my contribution to what is, for all intents and purposes, a very straightforward bill that is before this chamber. As I listen to the debate and I reflect on when I was a little boy and moving around in the village, I certainly saw a lot more persons than I see now who on a regular basis used to be drunk. In fact, sir, I well recall that we had fun as youngsters talking about people with rum faces. I don't know if you recall that. And I have to say that in today's Barbados, I do not see a lot of people with rum faces. I do not see a lot of people drinking and falling down and people having to lift them up and take them home. That sir, used to be. I didn't hear. You know, I don't hear sights. I didn't hear.
Neither did I, Senator Grant. My ears aren't that well tuned to the sights. I didn't hear that sight.
But that used to be part of our culture. But we've come a long way, and I think that it is important to recognize that the bill before us today really is seeking to ensure that we have a more well-managed environment than what we would have had under the previous or under the existing piece of legislation. So this bill essentially, sir, in my view, is here to ensure that the environment in which there is the issuing of licenses is done in liquor licenses is done in such a manner that it is more efficient and more effective. And I don't think, sir, that it is designed to make any money. I tried hard, sir, I must say, I tried hard in reviewing the legislation to see where the emphasis was on that. I see it, sir, as an opportunity to ensure that there is the minimizing of the wasting of money. Because the whole process now of getting a liquor license is one where persons have to fill out, I think there are 4 pieces of documents, same document, but you have to fill it out 4 times. You have to go to health, you have to get information from the Barbados Revenue Authority, and then you go to the magistrate's court. And there are many people who go to the magistrate's court, have an appointment to be there for 9 o'clock, and then 1 o'clock they're still at the magistrate's court. And if they don't get the license on that day, then they have to come back and go through the same process. And I think, sir, that this bill is properly addressing that issue. The bill also, sir, allows that persons can have licenses for multiple years, as presently exists. You can only get the license once a year. I know, sir, with respect to hotels, that their license ends on the 31st of December. So prior to the 31st of December, all of this stuff is done. And there's actually an officer who goes to the court and waits for significant hours in order to get the license. And I think, sir, that this bill is properly eliminating that, and I think that that is a good thing. Of course, sir, I think that there are other areas as well that we have to look at to ensure that in Barbados, we bring our processes into this century, because there are too many elements that we have in terms of how government functions and in terms of what is required in relation to doing business that is still very much archaic and needs, sir, to be treated in the same manner in which this piece of legislation has been treated. And I think that that is very critical and that that is very important. It obviously then, sir, speaks to the issue of productivity. And I happened, sir, although I was not in the chamber, I happened to hear my very good friend, Senator Drakes, speak to issues of tourism. Sir, I'm not going to trespass there, but only to say that when persons are forced to spend the amount of time that they do seeking to get a license, it's not productive at all. And in this period where we do have to seek to ensure that we are able to have more economic activity, we really cannot afford to have persons engaging in activities that are unproductive. A time is going to come, sir, when I will speak to the issues of COVID-19, the impact specifically on the tourism sector. But the reality is that it is extremely challenging, and therefore I think it is important to be able to identify what needs to be done in order to have a more productive environment. Sir, the issue of the legal age, I support that fully. It is important for us to safeguard our young people. I am very concerned, sir, and I've said it in this chamber before, and maybe it is that I am of a different age group, you know. I often say I'm in my young old age, but I am concerned that our young people are not as responsible as they should be. They seem not to have the moral fabric that would have been provided to many of us when we were young. And we have to be better able to guide them. I see a practice, sir, that exists at funerals. It is true I haven't gone to any funerals recently because of the COVID-19 directives. But when I last went to a funeral, in the churchyard, the sale of alcohol. Sir, and you know, yes, I heard reference to different calypsos. I like my ram, you know, the songs that went, and I understand the issue of socializing and all of that. But I believe, sir, that there are certain places where the sale of rum and the utilization of any alcoholic beverages should not take place. And I believe that the church is one such place. And I would like to think, sir, that under this legislation, that no licenses would be issued for the sale of alcoholic beverages at the church. I think, sir, that it is important that we uphold those kinds of traditions, because when we do that, we ensure that we keep the fabric of the society strong. You know, Mr. President, I certainly, I was not a youngster who did everything right. I was very adventurous as a youngster. But on Sundays, I had to go to church. In those days, sir, you went to church Sunday morning. You went to Sunday school Sunday evening. During the week, and there was any, and I came up in the Anglican church, but if there was any revival or anything going on, I had to go with my grandmother and sing to the revival and all of that. I would have said in this chamber before, I remember going to all different types of churches. And I reference that, sir, because what that did is that, you know, I used to hear a voice, not a voice in my head suggesting that my senses were not all there, but a conscience as to what is right and what is wrong. And I feel that those are things that we have to reinforce, such as not selling alcohol or allowing the consumption of alcoholic beverages on sacred ground. I consider that, sir, to be very critical and very important. The issue of restricting the sale and facilitating the restriction with respect to employment for persons who are below 18 years, I think that is important as well. 18, I believe, is referred to as the age of majority, and it is the age at which an individual is able to enter certain contracts. It is the age at which an individual is able to be responsible in law for themselves. And I did hear part of the contribution from the deputy president, and it is amazing. In countries, I went to school in Canada, sir, university in Canada. I have a daughter, sir, in England. And I can tell you, the practice is that once you hit that age of majority, you have to fend for yourself. That is certainly not our culture here, not at all. But I do think that what we have to do is that we have to put measures in place that we are better able to protect our young people. And some will argue, as they have with respect to making their submissions to the ministry responsible for small business, that 16 is too young an age, and that persons therefore should be allowed to make that decision at age 18. And sir, I am fully in support of that. I heard the comment being made that there's no need for the legislation to be here, that you need to have consultation with respect to this piece of legislation. And you know, when that comment was made, I thought to myself, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. The truth is, sir, that I believe that there's a responsibility on the part of the government, rightfully elected by the people of Barbados, to execute functions in the best interest of Barbadians, and to seek to ensure that by the measures that they bring to this chamber, both in the other place and this place, that they are in essence improving the way of life and improving the manner in which things are done. I don't believe, Mr. President, that there can be any question whatsoever that this bill will make administration better. I don't think there's any question whatsoever, sir, that this bill will ensure that there is a tightening with respect to the provision of alcohol for young persons. I don't think, sir, that there's any question or any doubt that this bill has far greater benefits and positives than any negatives that may have been referenced during this discussion. I therefore think it is important for us, all of us, to support this piece of legislation. It's easy, you know, sir, to come in and to criticize. That's very easy. What is not as easy, though, is to be able to offer solutions and recommendations in order to properly get things done. And I say it to this chamber, sir, that by the introduction of this bill, that we are making life better. Of course, sir, there are those who engage, as has been said in this debate, in different events and activities. And the process for them to be able to get a liquor license is now a lot easier. I do support, sir, the suggestion made that we do need those who are engaged in certain activities to be able to contribute. I believe, sir, in some jurisdictions, those who are supplying alcohol do have to provide a percentage in relation to doing some social work within the community. And I think that that is something that we do have to look at, because there will be some people who will be lost when they do partake in the alcoholic beverages. Most people, sir, can have a couple drinks and it's okay. I went, sir, to university, as I said, in Canada, and I had a friend from Bermuda. And sir, when he drank a bottle of beer, when he had one bottle of beer, sir, he used to be drunk. And when he drank another half, he used to pass out. That's the realities. You know, everybody is not the same. And I think that we do have to ensure that even though we are liberal, that we do not leave those who may not have the same kind of mettle, and that we find ways to assist them. So, Mr. President, with those very few words, I want to give my support to this bill, which I consider to be very important and which I believe will be very positive and will be certainly welcomed not only by those who function within tourism, but within the general business community and by the small business operators as well. I'm grateful to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator Grant. Are there any other contributions? Senator McConney.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really want to thank the honorable members of this chamber for their contribution to this debate. We've been debating for almost 5 hours now at this time. Pardon me? My comrade, I'm sure, Mr. President, you heard the honorable member say that people here must be drunk with debate. But anyhow, sir, I really just want to respond to some.
But thankfully, Senator McConney, there's no one here under the age of 18.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, sir. I do want, however, as is the respectful thing to do in such debates, to really respond to some of the concerns that have been raised by a number of members of this honorable chamber. Now, I want to start by, first of all, thanking Senator Greenidge for recognizing that it is not a free-for-all, that there has to be an authority and that there must be some order and there must be some special regulation to the selling and the supply. And that really and truly that when he expressed his experience of going and seeing the court's time being wasted by certain types of matters, and it's important that we be able to prioritize what should go before our courts at a time when it is busy. And in fact, it is a good thing that we are now easing the burden off the courts by taking the liquor license off their plate. I want to thank also Senator Springer for looking at the relationship between Barbados and alcohol. His intervention was quite interesting, but I think that it certainly showed the number of different angles from which we can look at the case of alcohol and the remedies that we would need to put in place. Senator Holder, she acknowledged the bill's intention, that it was to strengthen focus on business facilitation, and she acknowledged that that this government has in fact already done some significant work in terms of ease of doing business and facilitating persons. She mentioned the police certificate of character, and indeed that is certainly something we have done, and the intention, Honorable Senator, is that we will continue to make this process as close as we can to as easy as the certificate of character is. There are, of course, different processes, and of course, there will therefore be a little disparity, but indeed the intention is that it will be done efficiently, that it will be done quickly, and it will be done safely in a way that does good service to the people. Mr. Nurse, he talked about, he certainly supported the use of technology in this process, and I want to continue to thank him. He is indeed consistent in that regard in terms of introduction of technology. He also spoke about the ugly aspects or the ugly issues around the excessive use of alcohol and the targeting of young people, and I think that there was consensus that this is something that is not particularly desirable. Senator Haynes spoke about why it matters that we set a proper drinking age, and she spoke to the effect on the brain and stages of development and behavioral impacts as it relates to alcohol. Senator Maynard, in his very succinct, as usual, intervention, really made the point, reminded us that this bill is not intended to deal with access to alcohol. It is simply meant to deal with the regulatory side of it. And Senator Rogers, of course, in his very light-hearted but quite profound intervention, looked at the responsibility of consumption and asked that we consider not just the potency of alcohol, but that is accessed in Barbados, but we look at the potency of a number of other substances at this time. It follows on from previous interventions. Senator Grant, of course, spoke to the liquor licenses that it is really not for money, and that in fact that we need to keep the sale of alcohol out of the church. Now, I think that was an opinion, and I will let him and Senator Rogers work that out. But the point that he made about the liquor licenses not being about money takes me very easily into the matter that was raised by Senator Drakes. And Senator Drake spoke about revenue, and I just wanted to share with this honorable chamber, Senator Drakes, through you, Mr. President, the liquor license was never a great revenue earner for Barbados. Based on a statistic that was sent to me not long ago, I have not verified it, has been sent to me, Mr. President, was that Barbados hasn't made much over $1 million on the liquor license in any particular year. It was never intended, as from what I am being told, to be a big revenue earner for the government. And therefore, when the suggestion is made that government may be looking to use this as a way and to increase fees perhaps in order to make certain goals, I think it is unfortunate that we think that way, that every time there's an opportunity for us to make certain changes that might involve regimes that existed long before, where people were paying fees, etc., that we cast the aspersion on this government as being about looking for money. So quite frankly, I just want to clear it up for this honorable chamber that this is not about major revenue earnings for government. It never was, and it certainly, if we look at the track record from the statistics that have been given, it is not significant.
I want to rise.
A point of elucidation, sir. It is not that I was intended to say that this was going to be a major revenue earner for the government. I simply stated that the revenues that were outlined in the estimates for revenues and expenditure for this year, by the government's own documentation, the revenues are expected to move from $1.6 million from the previous financial year, the last financial year, this year, to $3 million. And I was just querying if part of that increase was coming from the increase in the fees that the liquor license would incur. That is all I was asking, sir. It wasn't casting necessarily aspersions on the government, just a query regarding the increase in those revenues from the liquor license fee. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Drakes.
Okay.
Senator McConney.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Drakes, for clarifying that matter. Another matter that was raised was whether or not this government will seek at some point in time to be excessive in terms of the persons that we will put on the liquor licensing and the liquor licensing authority, and whether or not there will be some way in which the public will then suddenly hear that the minister has in fact put, I cannot remember the term, but there was said 100 people or something like that was said, some outrageous number on the liquor licensing board. I do want to draw the attention of this honorable chamber, with your permission, sir, to clause 45 and clauses 47. The intention is that it says that the minister may make regulations, sir, and it gives 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different areas, which I will not read out necessarily to this court, and then it speaks in which regulations can be effected by the minister. And then it says that regulations made under this section, which is section 1, which has that list, are subject to negative resolution. The bottom line is, even if the minister does indeed make the regulations as is allowed under clause 41, negative resolution, as I'm sure all members in this honorable chamber knows, that has to be laid in Parliament. There is nothing that would be done behind the backs of the people, because it has to be laid in Parliament quite openly. So any innuendo or any imagining that people would have that this government will go about and make fat this liquor licensing authority and say nothing to the people of Barbados, it is a fiction, sir. because right here we have that this must be laid in Parliament, so there must be clarity and there must be transparency. In addition, sir, the speculation was given as to whether or not people would just suddenly hear that their fees have been increased for the licenses that they have. Sir, under section clause 47(1), a license issued under the former act shall continue in force until it expires. So it is not a matter of this government seeking to pull the rug from under persons who already have a license that has been issued, and they will suddenly discover that there are these new fees. So, Mr. President, I really just needed to clarify that and make sure that the public of Barbados understand that this government has no nefarious intentions. We are not looking to raise excessive revenue, and we are certainly not looking to foist upon the people of Barbados a big bill for a licensing authority at a time when this country can ill afford it. And I thought that it was important, sir, for us to be able to address that matter. In addition, there were a number of people who spoke on the age, the legal age established for to be able to buy and to be able to sell or participate in the sale of alcohol. And I heard lots of excellent interventions from our honorable members here in this chamber, but I also do want to remind this honorable chamber too that the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, to which Barbados is a signatory, that this age of 18 is certainly in line with that, and that indeed the Committee on the Rights of the Child, which is the monitoring body, encourages its member states to review their policies and their laws, and to ensure that to the extent possible that we establish a level of protection for children who are under the age of 18. It is therefore consistent with our international obligations and all that we work with in terms of the age that we have set of 18. Mr. President, I will not detain this chamber much longer. I simply want to reiterate that this bill is really about us meeting the expectations of the times and meeting the expectations of the people that we serve. That this bill is about the customer experience. You will see in terms of what we have done with regards to the process, and part of that customer experience is facilitation and ease of doing business. This bill, Mr. President, is about efficiency. It is about bringing structure. It's about bringing process. It's about bringing clarity and predictability to things that had previously been fuzzy with regards to this ad, and that would indeed enable us to be far more efficient and transparent in what we do. And sir, this bill is fundamentally in all that we say about regulation. It is about fair regulation, it's about transparent regulation, and it's about necessary regulation for us to manage the affairs of this country as it relates to the sale and the supply of liquor. And it is with these few words, Mr. President, that I beg to move that this bill be now read a second time.
Thank you very much, Senator Connie. The question is that this bill be read a second time. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do now leave the chair. The Senate resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Senate is now in committee. Parts.
Clauses 1 to 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 1 to 3 stand part.
The question is that clauses 1 to 3 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 4 and 5.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 4 and 5 stand part.
The question is that clauses 4 and 5 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 6 to 8.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 6 to 8 stand part.
The question is that clauses 6 to 8 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 9 to 19.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 9 to 19 stand part.
The question is that clauses 9 to 19 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 20 and 21.
Mr. President, I beg to move that clauses 20 and 21 stand part.
The question is that clauses 20 and 21 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 22 and 23.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 22 and 23 stand part.
The question is that clauses 22 and 23 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 24.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 24 stand part.
The question is that clause 24 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 25 and 26.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 25 and 26 stand part.
The question is that clauses 25 and the 26 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 27.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 27 stand part.
The question is that clause 27 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 33 to 39.
Just, the last clause was clause 27.
Sorry, beg your pardon. Clauses 28 to 32.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 28 to 32 stand part.
The question is that clauses 28 to 32 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 33 to 39.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 33 to 39 stand part.
The question is that clauses 33 to 39 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 40 and 41.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 40 and 41 stand
The
part.
question is that clauses 40 and 41 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 42 to 49.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 42 to 49 stand part.
The question is that clauses 42 to 49 stand apart. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the schedule be the schedule to the bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee? Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against? No. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Deputy President has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee. Senator McConney.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be read the third time.
Question is that this bill be read a third time. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Pass.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Liquor Licenses Bill Act, the Liquor Licenses Act 2021.
The question is that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Liquor Licenses Act 2021. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. This bill is now passed and so cited.
No, on suspension for 15 minutes.
Senator McConney.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this session, the sit-in do now be suspended for 15 minutes, returning at approximately 5:30.
The question is that this sitting be suspended until 5:30 p.m. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This sitting now stands suspended until 5:30 p.m.